the trial has been abruptly canceled. And it's never a good thing when a trial gets abruptly canceled because a federal judge believes that you're engaged in an unlawful, vindictive prosecution. But this is what's going down with the Trump DOJ right now. Take a look at this Abrego Garcia case where federal judge Waverly Crenshaw Jr., a United States District Court judge in Tennessee, just made a ruling that the trial of Abrego Garcia, which was set to take place on January 27, 2026, must hereby be canceled. The judge in the order says the case is now canceled. The trial is canceled. And instead, what will be taking place on January 28th, 2026 is an evidentiary hearing regarding the Trump regime's potential vindictive prosecution. Now, the federal judge explains that in a vindictive prosecution evidentiary hearing, courts use a burden shifting analysis where Abrego has already demonstrated with a significant amount of evidence that there is a presumption based on all the evidence, the overwhelming evidence that's been shown that the Trump DOJ has engaged in vindictive prosecution against Abrego. And now the burden shifts to the government to produce some evidence to now rebut this presumption. And it was a very hard thing in these types of cases to be able to assert the level of evidence or put forward the level of evidence to get that presumption. But now the DOJ needs to put up or shut up, quite literally. They need to put up a witness, and you know they don't like doing that, who's going to rebut the evidence that exists. Now, the DOJ's strategy has basically been to blame the United States attorney in Tennessee and say that it was this guy, McGuire, who's the United States attorney there, that McGuire did this on his own and he didn't know that Todd Blanche or that Trump or that, or Bondi or anybody wanted him to go and pursue criminal charges against Abrego. Well, that's rebutted, of course, by the clear evidence that Abrego's introduced with all of the memos and all the information and everything that's out there about, what Kristi Noem was doing, what Todd Blanche was doing, what all of these people were doing. And so now the judge said, doesn't make sense to even go forward with this trial. What does make sense is that we do an evidentiary hearing. Also, while this is taking place, the federal judge is saying, look, I feel like it's my obligation to unseal certain records to the public about what's transpired in my courtroom. And from what we can glean based on the information out there, the stuff that's going to be unsealed is very unflattering to Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem and all of these people for the judge to basically say, okay, we've got to cancel trial because of the stuff that I've seen right here. Meanwhile, the Trump regime is trying to assert attorney-client privilege and work product privilege to avoid these documents and statements going public. And the federal judge basically says, look, in response to what the federal court is doing, the government keeps on trying to claim attorney-client and work product, and we're not going to allow that to be used as a shield when they're engaging in this vindictive prosecution. I want to bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds podcast, the Talking Feds Substack, and the Talking Feds YouTube channel. Go subscribe to Talking Feds on YouTube Now, Harry, this is an extraordinary step that this judge is taking, saying, I've heard enough. We're canceling the trial. Instead of a trial, we're doing an evidentiary hearing on vindictive prosecution against the Trump regime. Now, in this hearing, Trump's going to have to put people, the DOJ is going to have to put people on the stand, whether that's McGuire, whether it's Todd Blanche, and you and I go back. What we've been saying with all of these things, we've seen from Blanche and Bondi, they've implicated themselves as witnesses. So now it's put up or shut up, right? If they want to rebut it, okay, Blanche, show up, become a witness. Pam Bondi, become a witness. Kristi Noem, you make these propaganda videos, become a witness. So if you look at the judge's order where he talks about now there's a presumption against you, but you can rebut this presumption by putting your witnesses on the stand. So either you put Noem and Bondi and Blanche and McGuire on, or what else am I supposed to do, right? So I think that's how the judge has smartly maneuvered this. And these people who love to go on Fox, state regime media, what are they going to do, Harry? We know they're not going to show up.
Yeah, so that I think is the bottom line, but let me start a little bit above that. Extraordinary motion, for sure. We won't even go there. We'll go into a vindictive prosecution setting where the defendant already has the leg up. We know from the Comey and James and other prosecutions, it's a very, very hard claim to win. And this judge has as much as said that unless you, DOJ, really come across with some very dramatic evidence, I'm going to dismiss this case. The DOJ has frittered away. I mean, they started with a hand so much more powerful than anything that this single deportee who shouldn't have been deported in the first place had. And just they have now gotten to the point where they really might have frittered away everything. As you've mentioned before, there are two things going on here, right? There's the immigration one, and that's Paula Zinnes in Maryland, who's been really pushing the DOJ. They keep promising, does the DOJ, to deport him to some terrible place unless they were going to make a deal. If you plead guilty to these charges, I'll get back to those in a minute, then maybe we'll let you go to Costa Rica where you actually would want to go. And remember, the reason this whole thing started is because they screwed up and sent him down to CCOT against an extant order. Meanwhile, remember the criminal case. They were ordered again and again, having said he'll never see the United States and he'll never be at liberty, and just made it clear they want to make him suffer as much as they can. Finally, they were forced, including basically by the Supreme Court, to bring him home. And that's when they pulled this fast one. And Bondi was especially kind of bombastic about it, of these charges in Tennessee that, okay, we're bringing him back, boom, but he's got to answer to these charges, which were really all built up from a traffic stop that they let him go into a 2-count federal indictment, all relying on this, the real boss. It certainly would appear who they were giving a sweetheart deal to. So the notion now that, it was McGuire, the U.S. attorney, who just on his own, it's cuckoo, because the whole idea, it was totally clear, as they were complying, but we'll comply nominally, but really make it miserable for him and the courts by putting him up for this criminal case. So this criminal case, from the start has been really losing altitude very quickly. He got actual release. And that's what caused the crisis for the DOJ. And now back again in Maryland, you would think that the DOJ could just grab him and stick him on a plane to Liberia, but really animated, I think, by just how nasty and oppressive and vindictive the whole government has been. We're talking from Trump on down, including Todd Blanche. Judges have moved to protect him. And right now in Maryland, she's trying to hold them at bay, and she will for a little bit longer, at least, before they can send them out. One final point where you ended, Ben, will they show up or not? Certainly the kind of, more than idle speculation, supposition by people who've paid most attention to it is that this is Todd Blanche and the brass of DOJ saying, let's really stick it to him if we have to bring him home and do these charges. And I think you're exactly right. If they testify, that's what's going to come out. That's what they're going to be questioned about. Todd Blanche, again, as Emile Bove was, as Bondi was, will look like a henchman for Trump. And you know what? They'll lose. I think the judge has made it clear, and good luck winning this kind of case, on appeal, although the Court of Appeals here could be fairly strong for Trump. But in any event, what do they do? So Blanche is going to have to play something of an open hand, and the judge, Crenshaw's going to make sure he has to answer questions. So yeah, it could just be, talk about tail between your legs, that they'll just say, never mind to this whole criminal case that he said, that Bondi said he's going to come and do all his time here before we then deport him. So, the courts have really responded to just a, really kind of Kafkaesque nightmare of the whole government, poised against this one guy because they sent him down to CCOT mistakenly, and people knew it and made him a sympathetic case. But they've tried every trick in the book. He's a terrorist, MS-13. We're not going to let him go where he wants to go, etc. And little by little, and if the whole thing really ends with him a free man in the States, man, oh man, would they have frittered away everything. But little by little, they've been reversed on all their efforts. And I'll just say quickly, back in Maryland, it's very clear what Zinnes is trying to do is to say, guys, just will you really, be reasonable? He'll go to Costa Rica. You lied and said Costa Rica wouldn't take him. They will. Send him to Costa Rica. And she's going to fight all she can to keep it from happening. So they really had thrown not just the book, but the whole U.S. government at this guy. And, thanks a lot to really dedicated lawyers, but really some very focused judges who understood the constitutional deprivations he'd been subjected to. Little by little, they're being left with close to nothing, and they may just have the whole thing, go through their hands like so much sand.
This is why, to move it to another area, Trump has gone bankrupt so many times, because it's a whole mindset of dealing with problems, and he allows a contagion that he creates to spread and metastasize and get bigger until it actually causes real issues that create bigger issues when you could just resolve this fairly quickly. The very first thing, if you wanted to get rid of Abrego Garcia, the one place you couldn't bring him is to El Salvador. So right away, if you just deported him to literally any other country, you would have been able to have done that right away. So then once you did that and you were ordered to facilitate his return, bring him back, and then deport him to another country. They bring him back, they criminally prosecute him in a vindictive prosecution in the Middle District of Tennessee. Their behavior is so egregious now that the federal judges have to intervene, because it seems like the Trump regime is like literally trying to get the guy killed. They want to send him to Liberia or other countries. And then they're lying and saying that Costa Rica doesn't want to take him. And the Costa Rica officials are like, yeah, we do want to take him. They're like, well, why are you lying to us? They call a number of witnesses before both Zinnes and Waverly Crenshaw, and these witnesses all show that they're lying right there. Trump and his team start to say that Abrego's like a sex trafficker, defame him, and they start to lie about him and say his tattoos, say this and that, and they engage in this defamation campaign against the guy, which is horrific to destroy the guy's life. So then the courts have to intervene on all of that, and then there are gag orders, and they're violating the gag orders, and now you have Todd Blanche, the number two, inextricably intertwined in this horrific conduct himself, when a deputy AG would never be involved in this, and the AG should never. Bounty's involved in all, Christy Nome's involved in this, and it just goes to show you how one person like Abrego can create a massive dent in this when you stand up. And I'll give you the final word, but it's also my criticism of these large law firms that bent the knee and all of these institutions that bent the knee, because you see someone like Abrego who has nothing stand up and win, while you have people with all the resources, power, and the so-called, and excuse my language, fuck you money, but then they use that to bend the knee and to become aiding and abetting of the harm being inflicted. So that's my observation. That may not seem an obvious one with this case, to say, well, that's why he goes bankrupt. But I think you can glean a real defective pathological thinking here that is destructive, and that regardless of your political party, this behavior towards Abrego is sociopathic in trying to go after this guy. if you wanted to solve the problem, it was a fairly easy problem to solve, even where you engaged in horrific conduct at the outset. If you wanted to do this the right way and just move on with everybody's lives. Harry, final word.
Yeah, I mean, well, do it right up, enforce the law with like a dollop of not even mercy, but just good sense. Why do you have to, make this guy maximally suffer? And really, it comes from Trump on down. How do we really, really stick it to this guy? And it's a pretty common pattern now. And, including, by the way, we're ending 2025. And I think the heroes of the Republic for this year are the district court judges who see things, that are going on the ground and can really respond not only to the equities, but to the lies that they're being fed, by the administration. So they're, able to, step in and intervene and just, they're not all they're simply doing is forcing the administration to go by its paces. But we've had this regular pattern where they do something political and nasty for Trump. That's the reason they're doing it, and it's propaganda, etc. And then the lawsuit comes, and then potentially the raising of the right hand and testimony comes, and all of a sudden they're backpedaling because the truth, were it to come out, would in fact show their disregard at best, or contempt at worst for the Constitution. And they thought they could it was a political stratum, right? I gotta imagine if this testimony were to come out, or we'd hear about Trump and Bondi and Blanche, I think we'd also hear about Stephen Miller, who's been so involved in immigration calls, and Kristi Noem, and the general indictment of the administration. And when it comes time that individual officials might have to raise their hands, tell the truth under penalty of perjury, that's the pressure that the system is able to use to get them to, I think, either fess up or fold their hands. So again, I think it's really interesting. It's going to come up soon. Will you see? I think they'll resist legally, but I think you'll see Crenshaw say, I want Todd Blanche, as they did before. It's not like he was just a supervisor from afar. He was calling the shots. I want him. And at that point, do they do the taco move and just close up and say, never mind, after beating their chest about it so broadly? We'll see.
Harry Litman, Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds podcast, Talking Feds Substack. My friend, Harry Litman. Thank you, my guy. Everybody subscribe to his YouTube channel. Just search Talking Feds. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, everybody. Hit subscribe here. Let's get to 6 million subscribers.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.